Good evening, everybody. I'm hoping you all are going to be tuning in here momentarily from the premiere of the YouTube premiere, anyway, of Symphony Number Four. Hello, Sans. Um, I'm looking a little out of focus. Let's see if I can fix that real quick. That looks better. All right. Thank you guys for sitting through the 30 minutes of music that was Symphony Number Four. I completed the initial composition on it yesterday, and over the next couple weeks, I'll be working on the engraving, creating the parts, and getting a full score ready to print and ship out. And yes, I do have some people who are interested in playing it already. Lane brought up in the chat that about a possible, or was it Lane or was it Lumi who was asking about if it has a premiere, and I have been talking with over the last couple days a band director who is very interested in doing a full premiere of the work. It would be December of next year, so about a year out. Which it would be in line with kind of how things progress, because the spring semester at this point is already programmed, and so you'd be looking at fall of next year, and December would have the longest prep time for a brand new symphony of about 30 minutes. And yeah, so that's where that stands now. Um, but yeah, I have finally been able to listen to the whole symphony from start to finish, now a handful of times over the last couple days, and it's one of those interesting pieces for me that I understand it on an intellectual level, and I'm still coming to grips with it on an emotional level. There's a lot of stuff going on. And it is the first time that I've ever written a multi movement symphony. Symphonies 1, 2, and 3 are all single movement. And I think that difference is really, really a drastic difference in writing style. For me, actually, the single movement symphony, even if it's like Symphony 3 and 70 minutes long, is actually easier to write in a lot of ways than the multi movement. With the multi movement, um, uh, cohesiveness between the five movements in this case can be very difficult to balance. Um, your instrumentation is relatively plain compared to your previous symphonies. Was this planned, or did it arise while writing? It was absolutely planned. So I'll talk a little bit about the genesis of the symphony. It started out with a piece called the Zephyrus Overture, which is now the fourth movement. And how that came about is one. It's actually a funny story. Uh, Basically, it was like Thursday evening. I'm in my car. I'm listening to a podcast driving home, and one of the gists of the podcast, it's an artist talking, and one of the um, things that came out is, if you want to really be recognized as an artist, you need to go over the top, and just as big as you can go. This grandiose idea, and I take that to heart. Said, I'm gonna just go balls to the wall and just go as big as possible. By the way, if you don't know, the term "balls to the wall" is absolutely fascinating in its origin. It has to do with elevators. An elevator going at max speed has ball bearings on the side, and when it goes at its fastest, the balls literally go to the wall. But anyway, so that is Thursday evening. This is back in May, so 6 months ago or so, 5 months ago. Friday morning, I wake up and said, what I should really do is sell my soul and completely sell out and write a band piece that anybody can play and that will be immediately marketable. And to that effect, I started writing a piece in B flat major that's fast, that's rhythmic, and that became the what originally was called the Zephyrus Overture, which is now movement 4 of the symphony. And it's everything that band directors want it to be. It's B flat. It's fast. It's happy. It's upbeat. It's got all these rhythm. It's got snare drum. It's got xylophone. And so I sat down to write it and said, okay, we'll write it about like a 5-minute piece. I mean, it clocks in exactly at 5 minutes. And I finished the piece in 72 hours. Completely written, orchestrated, and then over the next couple of days I did all the engraving work on it. Sans, it might, but I've always heard it as elevators. But anyway, so 72 hours. So by Sunday afternoon, I have the piece finished. And I posted it online, and I have a friend who says, I want to play it. So literally, I abandoned the grandiosity of Symphony 3, and immediately within 24 hours of having the piece done, I've got somebody who wants to play it. And at this point I said, well, it's a good start. What if I just turn this into, a full symphony? And so I mulled that over for probably a couple months. And I said, okay, what I'll do is I'll take fragments of this and I will expand on that and make this another 3 movements. And I'll make this the final movement. So I sold my soul to the band directors. Basically, yeah. But anyway, so I start thinking, and a lot of my composition process is completely in my head. I am just constantly thinking about what the piece is going to be without actually writing anything down. So the next thing I do is I write movement 3. Movement 3 is actually, on the page, it's very, very short. It's only like 48 measures. And I take the ideas from movement 4 and do that. And what happens is I settle on the fact that the interval of a ninth, whether it's a major ninth or a minor ninth, is the actual key to holding the whole symphony together. It is the interval you hear in every movement that is critical to every melody. It's the very first 2 notes you hear in movement 3. It's the opening 2 notes in the bass line in movement 4. It's all throughout all the movements. So everything is held together by the interval of a rising ninth. So I want something very, very contrasting to movement 4 when I write 3. And so I go very much Tristan und Isolde, and I have one cadence point in the whole movement where I just go big 5-1, but it's never that really satisfying 5-1 because it's all these ties over. But yeah, and so that came about, and that didn't take very long to write either because it's only 48 measures. And then I let it sit for a while, and I work on some other stuff like my euphonium sonata, and I finish book 3, and then I get to said, okay, well, the next thing I got to do is movement 1. Movement 1 took a good long while. It probably took 2 months to get through movement 1, just kind of coming to terms with what it's going to do. A lot of movement 1 is inspired by Mahler's First Symphony. And I love the idea of what's called the call to nature opening. It's basically, and it starts with Beethoven 9, really. It's a held note in the typically upper strings, but I don't have strings. So it's a held note with stuff going on underneath it. And that motive is now key to movements 1, 2, and 5. It's that call to nature opening. So they kind of echo each other. So movement 1 comes along, and movement 1 is actually really pretty standard, pretty straightforward. And then I'm talking with my friend who's going to premiere it, And he keeps saying, man, the ending of movement 4 is just, it's not as satisfying as I want it to be. And I keep thinking, well, after I've written 1, 3, and 4 now, you're right. It's not, the ending is not satisfying. And I mull over. I know that I want to end it soft. I want to end it elegiac. Yeah. Like an elegy, an epilogue. And I start looking, and it's one of those things that just stumps me for weeks, if not a month. How do I get that sound? And then I just go back, and if I'm ever stumped like that, it's always score study. And I go back to one of my all-time favorite composers, and that's Ralph Vaughan Williams. If you don't know the symphonies of Vaughan Williams, they are just an absolute treasure trove. And I look at the Symphony 9. And Symphony 9 is his final symphony, and it's his most adventurous orchestration-wise because he brings in 3 saxophones and a flugelhorn into the symphony orchestra. Absolutely fascinating. And it... And so I look at that and I start borrowing elements from there. And that's where that haunting saxophone chorale comes from. It's an homage to Vaughan Williams' Ninth. And it's not necessarily stealing because I change it up quite a bit, but that's the genesis there. And so I have that, and it fades off into nothing, and then I go on and say movement 2. I got to write movement 2 now. It's the only one left, and I keep wanting to write. I want to write a forest scene piece because I love forests. I love being out in nature, and so I start writing. To me, what's a forest scene, and I draw lots of inspiration from works like Forest Murmurs by Richard Wagner. I start looking at some Mahler, but I keep coming back, and it's like, this isn't a forest. It's not a forest. It's an ocean. Oh, okay. So when I realize it's not a forest, it's an ocean, I have to go to the most well-known ocean piece of all in Debussy's La Mer. And finally, when I start really cramming and studying La Mer, the final textures of Movement 2 come out. And so Movement 2 owes a lot to La Mer. So, I mean, composers borrow much more than anybody ever admits. So I'm borrowing from Mahler and Debussy, and there's lots of Shostakovich, there's Wagner, there's Vaughan Williams. So I'm pulling from all of my favorite composers, and it all synthesizes into something that I feel is me. But anyway, since most of you guys have heard it, I'm curious to know what you think of it. It becomes a very personal piece, and a lot of it, I think with all my music, at some point, it is me trying to come to grips and deal with my own battles with depression and anxiety and all that stuff. Yeah, Shostakovich but not the really heavy Shostakovich. It's more like the folk song stuff of Shostakovich. Like Festive Overture or stuff like that. And quite honestly, Shostakovich has never been one of those composers that's really grabbed me in the same way that Mahler does. I think Mahler has a lot more subtlety than Shostakovich does. But I understand that there's a lot of people out there who just absolutely love Shostakovich. I should listen to more, but Shostakovich is almost too depressing for me, which is saying a lot. But yeah, so go ahead and I want to know what you guys think of it, does it actually make sense? And that, for as a composer, that's one thing I always really worry about a lot is a piece cohesive? Does it make sense from beginning to end? And I try to think about this from a theoretical point of view. Um, how do I get scores? Man, if you want scores, go to imslp.org, and all your classic scores are there for free. Um, but yeah, go to IMSLP. I print them off. So I mean, what score do I have here? Um, so I'm just pulling off paper cut, random score off of IMSLP, and that I printed off, and boom, there you go. I bought a cheap laser printer, a Brother, and I bought some binding material, and I print off score every day or so. This one I pulled off happens to be literally, this is a band piece by Carl Nielsen. Carl Nielsen wrote a single band piece, and fascinating as that is. It's a piece I really need to go and study more. But yeah, Nielsen band piece that I just happened to randomly pull out. Yeah. Oh no, I bind them here. You can go and buy a binder, a comb binder for like $20 off of eBay, and just get a bunch of combs, and you're good to go. But anyway, yeah. So one of the ideas of the piece is the idea of trying to break free of B flat. B flat is kind of like the king of all band keys, and everybody plays B flat. And there's some sayings. It's as bland as B flat. So the piece starts off in B flat. Ostensibly, the symphony is in B flat. But the whole idea of the piece is trying to get away from B flat. So Symphony Movement 1 tries to go away. There's a brief section right at the end where it goes to E major, and then B flat wins out. And then Movement 2 is starts in C sharp minor, which moves to D flat through E major, and that from that D flat it goes into Movement 3, which is B flat minor, same key. So B flat's 1 again. And then Movement 4 is just straight B flat all the way through, but it's kind of thumbing your nose. Movement 4 should be supremely sarcastic. And then Movement 5 is where we finally break from B flat and we go fully to E, kind of a modal minor. And so we go from B flat major to E minor, a tritone away, and get as far away from B flat as we can. Yes, the premiere Symphony 2 did not happen. Some things fell through. Personnel manager of the ensemble resigned, and we couldn't make it happen. Do I use MuseScore? Absolutely not. I use Finale. I know about MuseScore, but this is going to sound kind of snotty, but MuseScore is kind of like the fan fiction for composers. And that's kind of how MuseScore is kind of seen by a lot of composers. It's a great beginner tool, but you would never present something to a musician that you've done in MuseScore. I reckon a big factor of why I love Folk Song Suite is because it's in F minor. The minor keys are great. Folk Song Suite is interesting in that there's a missing movement of that piece that always gets left out of performance. So it's actually Actually, it should be a 4 movement piece and not a 3 movement piece. But the publisher decided to take out one movement and publish it separately. So that's fun. Um, but yeah, so that's Symphony 4. I will be doing prep on the score over the next few days. Means I will probably be sending it off. I'd love to get the score sent off to the printer um, within a week or so, and then I've got to get the parts edited. I have to deliver parts to at least one university by January 1st. So that's going to take a little while. Have I looked at Dorico? I yes. Dorico, from what I understand, is going to be the industry leader. It's still in its infancy. A lot of people are just completely enamored with what it can do. Um, I have not switched over yet. I am still firmly in Finale. I do have Sibelius. I don't particularly like Sibelius. And one of the things is, I can compose in Finale. I can't compose in Sibelius. Meaning, Sibelius is just slow for me, note entry wise. But what I can do in Sibelius is I can engrave. And Sibelius, I think, is actually easier to engrave in than Finale. But that said, I think Finale ultimately can do more than Sibelius can. But they're very different programs, and you want to see music nerds fight, get into argument, Sibelius or Finale. But yeah, one of these days, if I ever have enough um, expendable money, I will probably get Dorico and start learning it. But not anytime soon. I need to get more people signed up to play Symphony 4, which I'm working on. If you guys know any band directors who would like to look at this piece, please have them get a hold of me. Um, the piece is designed to be able to be played by a top high school group or any college group. It is done with a very, very standard instrumentation. There's nothing extraordinary about it. Um, there, I do have like oboe 2 goes to English horn. Okay, that's pretty standard. And then 3 trumpets go to flugelhorn. Other than that, there's nothing in here that is non-standard. But yeah, so if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, that is about it on Symphony 4. It was about 6 months of work and planning, but it's mostly done now, and we're going to be moving into the promotion and performance stages next. All right, but looks like you guys are pretty quiet now, so thank you guys so much. I think my band director would be interested. What's the range of the low clarinet parts? And the tenor clarinet might be an issue. Well, tenor clarinet, remember, is just an alto clarinet. That is a non-negotiable instrument. The part cannot be dispensed with. The bass and contrabass clarinets all go down to written low C, but it can be adapted to a low E flat instrument if needed. Sans, would that be a high school group or a college group? And, another thing, I actually had points when I was going to have more instruments in there. I had alto flute in movement 2 that ultimately got taken out, as well as soprano sax that ultimately got taken out. But yeah, so I'll wait for Sans to answer that, because I know there's a super long lag on this. But high school, our bass concerts go to E flat. Yeah, it's doable. I mean, there are some parts where that low C is really, really wanted, like the very end of movement 3, where it's both of them down on that low C, and it's the only instrument there. But it's not the end of the world if you don't have it. But all right, guys. So that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for listening to Symphony 4. And I will do a band nerd hangout on Thursday where we'll talk all about mallet percussion. But thanks, guys.